I must apologize. But we have to keep him here. You shouldn't have come here.
Hello, and welcome back
You shouldn't.
for another episode of Creepy Kroly. I am your host, ZC Kroll. This is a horror podcast. We are on episode 6 now. I don't know if this is your first listen, or if you've been with me since the beginning. But we are just a laid-back, this is just a laid-back podcast where I talk about horror, movies, books. I am a writer. I have written a short novel / novella called Disseverment, which is on Amazon. And if you're into like kind of dark, kind of moody horror, I think you would really dig that. But yeah, this is mostly just talking about my love for the genre, the stuff that has inspired me over the years, the stuff I grew up with. I'll do lists of my favorite things. I do watch-alongs. I have this thing called To Be Tuesday. I hope it's working out with how we're syncing everything. But basically, I just find a horror movie on the streaming app Tubi, and you just kind of watch along with me as I give, I guess, commentary. It's usually just not very valuable input. But I certainly have fun. I don't know if any of you are having fun that are listening. That's not true. A couple of friends have given me feedback saying that they've chuckled here and there, and I really appreciate that. So I'm going to keep doing it. Hopefully this episode is sounding a lot better than the previous 5. That is because I've gotten new equipment. I got a new microphone and a new interface. This equipment was suggested to me by a good friend of the show. The show is me in my basement. I don't know, John from Horror Dads. John, shout out to you. Thank you for the suggestions on equipment. I did a few sound tests. I think this stuff sounds amazing. So hopefully it kind of hides my weird breathing. I'm trying to get better with the uhs and the ums and the you knows and the right and all that. But I just did it right there. Did you hear it? Are you guys seeing Scream this weekend? Scream 6? They're saying it's called Scream, in the trailers and stuff. Yeah, I'm seeing it this weekend with 2 of my good friends, Brian and Nicole, his wife Nicole. I'm really pumped for it. I think it's going to be good. I understand that there's fans out there that are kind of, proceeding with caution. But I mean, it's the 6th one, man. I'm just, if it's a, out of 10, if I walk out of the theater thinking that it's a solid 6 out of 10, I'm very happy. I'm a happy moviegoer, and I don't even think that'll be the case. I think it'll be above that. So I don't know. I said this before. I think people just expect too much out of movies, man. I get it when you're spending, $13 on a ticket, but I think it's because I just love horror so much specifically that I know how much of it is not good. When something is halfway decent, I'm like, oh, this was great, Yeah, are you seeing Scream 6? Are you excited? Are you expecting a good movie? I would I'd love to know. But yeah, but I think I'm gonna dig it. They actually just announced 7 already, Scream 7. I saw it, Nathan in the Discord there, hi Nathan, shared it in the Discord there, the Creepy Kroly Discord. And I don't think that's like surprising. I mean, they must be confident that it's going to do well. I mean, I think they probably already have the numbers as far as like the pre-ticket sales and stuff. I'm sure they have like it's on track to make a certain amount. I'm sure you could look that up. But yeah, I'm very excited to go. I'm probably gonna wear a Scream T-shirt that I have. I live in a small town where I don't think people are really into that stuff. I don't think I've ever gone to a premiere. I used to go to midnight premieres when I was in college. They don't really do midnight premieres anymore. And people used to dress up. I remember I saw Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and people were dressed up as Indiana Jones. They did that for all the Star Wars movies, the prequel movies. The Dark Knight, when I saw that. Harry Potter, especially, people dressed up for those. Pirates. But it seems like all that kind of went away. You know, so in the town I live in, I mean, just nobody does that at all. So I'm going to be wearing a Scream T-shirt, which is like the bare minimum of dressing up, and I'm probably going to be looked at as a weirdo. But I don't care, whatever. Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be good. I'm a little bummed about a certain main character not coming back. I'm not going to spoil the last one, but yeah, my friend Tiffany, she's a little... The last movie did her dirty, and I get it. She's not pumped for the new one, and yeah, I don't blame her. I don't. My dogs are down here right now, and one is just like going apeshit about something. He's doing his Tasmanian devil thing. I don't know if you can hear it because I got this new mic. It's like a shitty way to show off my new mic. Hey, my dog's having a fit. You can't even hear it because my mic rules. So I want to thank you for not thank you. I mean, I don't even know if you listen to it. If you listened to the To Be Tuesday I did last week for The Stuff, the 1985 movie, I love that movie. If you listened along, I hope you enjoyed it. Classic 80s, just silly, comfy, cozy fun. Yeah, I had mentioned in that episode, I did a test run of another movie, kind of as my first To Be Tuesday, just to see how it worked with syncing up the ads and shit like that. So the first test I had done was for Ice Cream Man, and I got like halfway into the movie, and like it just had dawned on me that like I don't know if this is gonna work because the ads I'm getting aren't gonna be the same as yours, and I don't know how I'm gonna like edit around that, and it just became a whole thing. But I was having such a good time watching the movie and recording. I listened back to the first half of it, and I was laughing at myself. Do you ever make yourself laugh? Are you ever in like the shower or something, or in the car, and you think back to something you said or did, and you're just like, man, good job, you. Like, that was a good one. I don't like hearing the sound of my own voice. I think I sound very nasally and I'm just like, hey guys, how's it going? But I listened back to that first half of the Ice Cream Man To Be Tuesday, and I actually enjoyed myself. So I'm going to redo it. The next one I'm going to do is Ice Cream Man, because I was just so tickled. I'm so tickled by that movie. I think you will be too if you haven't seen it, or if you have seen it. I think you'll just enjoy sitting around listening to me watch it. Yeah. I have a skunk update. I don't know if you have been listening to the past couple episodes. I just realized I'm like following up on a lot of things from past episodes, and if this is like your first one, like you have no idea what I'm talking about. So I hope I'm having a good time though. I tell you what. I do have a skunk update. I had mentioned that my dogs got skunked twice now. So we hired animal control. There's a point to this story, and it is horror related, so I promise this is worth it. We had animal control come, and they set up a trap. It was only supposed to be there for a week. Ended up being there 2 weeks. We finally got rid of it today. No skunk. We did not capture a skunk. So I've been using a flashlight outside when they're out there doing their business. My dogs. Just to like kind of scan the yard, make sure there's no skunks around, because I don't want my house smelling again. My house still smells, actually. I can't really tell right like now because I live in it. I live in the stink. But my wife can tell when she gets home. And if I go out to like get groceries or something, I'll come back and I'll be like, "Whoa, this is what I live in." So I use a flashlight to like kind of scan the backyard as they're doing their business, and I noticed this was at night. It was a couple nights ago. The next door neighbor, they have a little kid, a son. He's probably like 5 or 6. He was looking out the window at me, like staring at me, using the flashlight to like scan the yard. He was staring at me. So I saw him staring at me. I put the flashlight up to my face because it was at night. I put the flashlight up to my face and I just went bah! With my hands like I did a scary So I put it up to my face and I went blah! And he ran away screaming. I didn't see. I couldn't hear him screaming, but like he turned around running. And then my neighbor texted me like 2 minutes later, and he goes, "You made my son cry." And I'm like, "You've got to be shitting me." So I felt really bad about it. But I also laughed a little bit. Because, first of all, I don't have a scary face. I'm not a scary person. Okay, I'm a nice person. I didn't... So I felt bad. And I told him sorry, and I was like, I have to like repay him somehow. And we were at the grocery store, and I saw that they were selling like this like homemade volcano kit, like for kids, like this National Geographic like homemade volcano kit. It looked like it made a mess, and it was for ages like 8 and up. And I was like, I'm pretty sure he's like 6, so I'm gonna get him something that's like 2 years above him. Like, this is for the big kids. He's gonna be so cool when he tells his friends about it. So I bought it, and I wrote a little note on it, and it said, "Hey, I'm sorry I scared you the other night. Please go ahead and make a big mess in your house." And I left it on their doorstep, and I rang the doorbell, and I basically ding-dong ditched. Oh, and the whole point of why I said this was horror-related is because I signed the note. I said, go ahead and make a big mess in your house, and I signed it, the creepy guy next door. And then I ran back to my house because I ding-dong ditched him. And then my neighbor texts me back, and he goes, "Dude, you didn't have to do that." And I'm like, "Yeah, I felt bad, And he goes, No, I was just kidding. My son wasn't actually crying." So that was funny. And I actually did laugh because I knew I didn't have a scary face, first of all. So that I feel vindicated there. And 2, I just did a nice thing as a neighbor, and I got him a kick-ass volcano making kit. So I don't even care. I came out on top. You know what I mean? And I signed it the creepy guy next door, who is creepy now, lying to me about your kid crying. I'm just kidding. My neighbors are cool, by the way, so this isn't like I'm not trash talking. All right, so what else is going on in my life right now? I know what I was gonna say. I just watched a movie. Someone on Instagram. Let me pull up his name. Made a movie. This director, Brandon Keenan, made a movie called Body Farm. It's a 2020 movie. I'm looking at the IMDb, the IMDb right now. He's the co-director with Nick LaMantia. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Nick. It's either LaMantia or La Mancha, maybe? I bet it's LaMantia. But they co-directed this movie, Body Farm. It's available on Plex for free, actually. And it was pretty damn good, man. I wrote a review on my Instagram. He's a really nice guy, Brandon Keenan. But yeah, man, indie movie. Gotta support indie horror, man. Yeah, well done movie. Brandon, I told you I liked I wrote a review, but yeah, shout out to you and your crew. Your cast was awesome. Yeah, great movie. Great location, too, wherever you filmed that. Yeah, very, very moody and atmospheric. It's not a... it comes across like the idea that's not a place you'd want to be at. Yeah. Also, I was going to ask you, how the hell did you get Richard Christie in that movie? I don't know if anybody knows who that is, but I'd love to hear how you made that happen. But yeah, if you have Plex, check out Body Farm, guys. It was pretty good. Yeah, what else is going on? Oh, I'm going to be on another podcast. I mentioned I was on Midnight Terrors last week, and I had a great time. They're buddies with these other guys, Luke and Marcus. They have a podcast called Reviewed to Death, and I'm going to be on there next week. I talked to them. Really excited to meet them. I talked to Luke. He seems like an awesome guy. And we're going to be talking about the 1999 kind of forgotten... I don't even know if you guys have even heard of this movie. Maybe you have. It's called Virus with Jamie Lee Curtis. And Donald Sutherland's in it. And William Baldwin. I had only seen it a couple times. I have since reviewed it again for this podcast, Reviewed to Death. Not a great movie. I'm gonna reserve my thoughts for Luke and Marcus. But yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis. It's so funny. Like, it came out a year after Halloween H2O, but she looks younger in Virus. So that's gonna be one of the first things I bring up. But yeah, I've been reading about the production of it. Interesting, like, kind of backstory, and yeah, I'm gonna have fun. I've been listening to their episodes, and yeah, they have a great podcast. So check them out. Luke and Marcus, Reviewed to Death. They're on Spotify and I think Apple Podcasts and Google Play Podcasts. But yeah, love their stuff. I've got another announcement. Yeah, I think I already mentioned I have a short novel, novella. Some people, I always say short novel / novella. I'll stop saying it that way. It's a novella. Some people don't really know what the word novella means, and really it's just like a short, like some people say novelette. They're called that as well. But it's basically a short novel. But literally the term is novella. And it is just, it's a short 6-chapter kind of piece of fiction. I mean, it can be as many chapters. I mean, I'm talking about Disseverment in particular, but Disseverment is just a 6-chapter kind of, book that I published about a year ago now. And it's a brutal horror story. And some of you have read it, some of you that listen to this podcast. It's a dark story. And a good friend of mine that I've known for a long time, his name is TJ Firestone. He lives in LA. He does a lot of stuff in Hollywood. Not to talk you up a big game there, TJ, but I am really proud of you that you're out there doing your thing, and I just think it's so awesome. But yeah, he does voice work. I've heard samples of his voice work. He's phenomenal. And he has agreed to do the audiobook version of Disseverment. And he's going to kill it. He's going to absolutely kill it. And I'm excited to share it with you. I think if you've read Disseverment already, I think you'd still be interested in this, just to kind of hear it, read to you and kind of performed to you. There's going to be music, and I'll have kind of limited sound effects. It won't be like a dramatic production or anything, like those old radio serials. It won't be anything like that. But it's going to be a proper audiobook, properly, recorded and, produced and mixed. It's going to be legit, and it's going to be on Audible. And I'm really proud that we're doing it together. I love when stories can be told in different mediums. The same story. I love that you can digest it. When you can digest it in different ways. It kind of helps, kind of paint a picture for you even more. If you want that, if that's something that you seek. Yeah. I'm excited. I'm really excited. And, for those who didn't read it, I think to hear it for the first time might be kind of a cool experience. Yeah, that'll be coming out in May. And I will be giving you more updates as that goes on. Before we get into tonight's topic, I wanted to just kind of share some of the movies I've been watching lately. First of all, I talked to Kevin from Midnight Terrors. Kevin, can I say that we're friends now? I'm going to say that we're friends now. It's official. The plan is for me to be on there sometime soon to talk about The Dentist and The Dentist 2. Which, if you haven't seen those movies, stop what you're doing and go on Tubi. They're both on Tubi. I have them on Blu-ray because I'm Mr. Fancy Pants. But they're 90s, just kind of VHS classics. Midnight Terrors, they have not seen The Dentist or The Dentist 2. It'd be funny if they saw The Dentist 2 and not The Dentist 1. But I think the plan is for us to tackle both of those movies, which is going to be just such a delight for me. Because those movies, along with Ice Cream Man and Jack Frost from 1997, and you've got Killjoy. I'm probably going to do an episode on really good bad movies, if you would be interested. And I would love, there's so many I haven't seen, obviously. So if there are any that you've seen that are just awful, let me know. I can add them to my list, and maybe, I can watch them and talk about them as well. But Killjoy, I mentioned The Dentist too. I also watched The Ginger Dead Man with Gary Busey doing the voice of the Ginger Dead Man. I'm pretty sure they were doing like a ripoff of Chucky, because he's a talking ginger dead man. He's a gingerbread man. And I do enjoy it, but some movies are just so bad. I get a little frustrated because my friend Todd understands this. My friend Nate understands this too, actually. It's not that I don't not like bad movies, or that we don't. I think we all agree on this. It's when they're not even trying. Like, at least try to make a good movie. And if you don't succeed, then I can laugh. When you really tried your best and it just is a pile of dog shit, then it's funny. But The Ginger Dead Man, as silly as it is, and I chuckled quite a few times, they didn't even, like... they didn't even, like, try at all. So, it's just dumb. It's just a dumb movie. Yeah. But thankfully, I think it was last Saturday, I did a pairing of that. I kind of cleansed my palate by watching the original My Bloody Valentine right after. I was supposed to watch it because I'm trying to watch it every Valentine's Day now. That's kind of my goal, that and the remake. And Valentine with Denise Richards. Which none of that happened this year. But I did watch the original classic. What a great movie, man. It's so moody and so, like, just the filming's great, and it really holds up. I think some of the acting is incredible. Yeah, definitely see My Bloody Valentine, the original one, if you haven't. You don't have to wait until next Valentine's Day, just watch it. Yeah, good movie, man. So I also watched. So tonight's topic. I've had this topic in mind since beginning this podcast, and I sort of had a list already in mind of what I wanted, to talk about. And I watched this movie. This movie was on my list. I've seen this movie before. But the thing that kind of brought it home, I was like, this should be the next episode, was I watched Jacob's Ladder the other night. It's a movie from 1990. It's got Tim Robbins in it. I don't think a lot of you have probably seen this movie. I think it's a little under the radar, unfortunately. I think it was advertised more as like a drama thriller. Not necessarily... I mean, it is a horror movie. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, I feel like maybe the studio didn't know what to do with it at the time. It's just kind of a weird mishmash of ideas, kind of about the Vietnam War. So I saw it in college. I think I saw it twice in college. And it did freak me out. There's one scene, I mean, like the most famous scene. I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen it. I remember that particularly freaking me out. And I remember, how, like, kind of philosophical it was. Kind of like what the ending means, and one of those kind of deep thinking movies, which I love. A lot of people were confused by it when it came out. A lot of people are still, like, kind of confused about what the movie means, and, like, there's kind of, like, a lot of unknown, it's a very Lovecraftian movie. It's all about kind of, like, the unknown, and just kind of, like, cosmic, unknowable horror. And I think people those movies never seem to do very well. It seems. Anyway, I'm going to get back to that in a second, but what I'm trying to say is that I watched it again a couple nights ago, and watching it now, years after college, because I don't think I've seen it since then. Whoa, that movie scared the shit out of me. Really, genuinely terrifying, just, like, shit-pantsingly, like, really scary movie. In a way that I don't know a lot of horror people, like, understand. You have to be, like, in the right mindset to understand why it's so scary. And, like, I'm not trying to sound, like, farty and, like, I get it and you don't get it. Because I think a lot of people do that these days with, like, the kind of elevated horror. I think if you, like, really sit down and like, turn all the lights off and watch it on a big TV with really good sound and put your phone away and really think about everything that's happening in the movie and really let yourself be absorbed by all the imagery and really let yourself get sucked into the story. I think you would find that it's a very scary, like, whoa kind of movie. Like, there's a lot, and you're not gonna understand. There's, like, it's purposely not meant to be completely understood. It's a little ambiguous, so I understand that's frustrating. But if that movie doesn't scare you, I'm a little worried about you. Because it freaked me out. But anyway, I'll talk more about it in a second. Because tonight, I hope you guys like my rambling. Because I could do this for hours. I'm trying to keep these episodes at an hour and a half. But, you know, if it's like a Saturday and it's raining out, I could do like an 8-hour episode. No, not really. I couldn't do that. Tonight's topic, I'm going to give you the 13 scariest movies I've ever seen. And what I mean by that is the 13 movies that have scared me the most. Me personally. I don't think these are the scariest movies ever. I did do a list that was like the 13 greatest horror movies ever. But, like, being scared, you know, what scares you and what scares me, all of this is, like, subjective and stuff, you know? So, like, don't take me seriously. There's probably gonna be a couple on this list where you're gonna be like, what? Why is Gremlins 2 on here? ZC Kroll. It's not on here, but why is Roadhouse on here? Yeah, so 13 the 13 movies that have scared me the most. Now, this is kind of, like, complicated, because nothing's simple with me when it comes to making lists and kind of, like, thinking about the horror genre, because I'm a nerd, okay? So, it's kind of complicated because there are movies that scared the poop out of me, that don't scare me anymore. And there's ones that I've seen over the past couple years that really freaked me out. Some that I've seen, like, in the past few months that really freaked me out, that I would put high up on the list. But I don't find it fair to put them on a list because I, like, just saw them. So I had to think about, like, the best way to do this, to give you, like, a fair list of what actually makes me poop my pants. Because I know that's driving you insane. You think about it every day when you're driving to work. If you drive to work, you're like, I want to know. No, you don't. I'm kidding. So I'm going to give you the 13 scariest movies I've seen that actually still kind of freak me out. Like, these movies still scare me. If I were to watch any of these, I'm just going to say the same thing over again. If I were to watch any of these movies at any given point, like now, I would probably be freaked out by them a little bit. I would get sucked into the story. I would totally sympathize with the characters. There would be imagery that would really mess with me. There would be some kind of editing or music that's used in a way that affects me a certain way that kind of messes with my mind when I'm trying to sleep later. These 13 are all those types of movies. Like, they make me think. They make me think about, like, the stuff that I myself am afraid of. So I relate to some of them, you know, about specific situations. So yeah, these are those 13 movies that actually still freak me out. But to kind of give an overview of movies that kind of used to freak me out. So it's like the, I know this is like, it's is this too scatterbrained? Or are you just kind of like, whatever, man, just start talking, just start naming the movies. I can do that. So I'm going to give you that list, but first I'm going to tell you just kind of like to set the tone of like what has scared me in the past, but they don't scare me anymore. I'll give you a list of those 13 that used to freak me out, but I've seen them enough and I've gotten old enough. Enough years have passed where I'm desensitized to them, or I appreciate them now in a different way. Like, a couple of them on this list are like some of my favorite movies of all time. Like, you know, I just appreciate them in a different way. So starting off, these are in no particular order. The Ring from 2002 with Naomi Watts. I still love this movie. It's one of my favorite horror movies. It doesn't really scare me anymore. It used to. And all the things that you're thinking of that scared you when you saw this, those all scared me when I saw it. I think I was in 9th grade when it came out. Yeah, 9th grade, 2002. Yeah. And, yeah, seeing it for the first time, it's like, holy whoa, like holy balls, you know? It's very effective, you know, there aren't necessarily jump scares. There's just very bizarre imagery, like watching, like the tape, like the actual imagery on the tape is bizarre. You know, the ending is insane, like the way the people's faces look, you know, when they're contorted, you know, the girl in the closet at the beginning, all that stuff really messed me up. But it doesn't anymore. Now I just love the movie. I think the story is super engaging and unique. I know it's a remake, obviously. But yeah, I just think it's a masterful like piece of work. But it doesn't scare me anymore. You know, now I just like really like it. And that's the same with the next one, which is The Exorcist. The Exorcist. I still think it's scary, but not in the same way that like I'm actually like petrified of like walking in the house by myself. You know, when you see a movie and you're like walking around in the dark and you're like, oh shit, the thing's gonna come out and get me. Because that's how things work. You know, you just see a movie and then literally that thing's gonna come out and get you because that's how things work. The Exorcist does not do that to me anymore, but while I'm watching it, I very much am like sympathizing with the mother because she doesn't know what the hell she's, you know, what is she gonna do? Like, she doesn't know what's going on with her daughter. The girl, I feel for the girl, you know, the poor Reagan. You know, the imagery and like some of the dialogue is so like wild for the time. The effects are crazy. Like, it is a scary movie. It does freak me out. But I just find it more like good and effective as a like a piece of art as opposed to something that's affecting me. Like, I look at it more like, oh, this is a really cool thing they did, and I totally see how this scared other people, and I love everything they did here, and this is all awesome. But for me, like, I'm just kind of like not feeling it anymore. Now, when I first saw it, when she's crawling down the stairs and her head's spinning and she's doing all the things, no, not a fan. But, you know, you get older, and I don't know if it's because when you get older, you become desensitized because you see more stuff, or because your brain starts to understand more that stuff's fake, and you read about like the behind the scenes stuff and like what they used for that. You know, you hear about like the pea soup and I don't know. Anyway, the next one would be Paranormal Activity. I saw this in the theater. There was so much hype about this movie, Paranormal Activity, which was in, like, I think 2009, 2008. I was in college, and I think this was kind of, looking back on it, there's another one like this I'm going to be mentioning in a second here. I feel like the hype and the marketing kind of all worked in unison to make it a scarier experience through hype than it really was. Because I watch that movie now and I'm just like, oh yeah, there's just wires and they're dragging her off the bed. That's how they did that. And there's probably like a crank and they're wheeling the wires and then... But when you're in the theater and you're like, oh my god, there's a ghost. And, and like I'm like afraid laying in my bed at night seeing that movie afterward. I don't know. I don't know why that movie scared me, because I struggle with the ghost thing. Yeah, it was just done in an effective way. It was done so kind of matter of fact. The acting was very convincing. I probably haven't seen it in like a year, so maybe I should review it and see if any of this holds up. But I swear, like, there was no music, and the effects were very simple, and the way things were happening was just kind of like, oh, this is just a normal, thing, normal day, and all of a sudden this thing's moving, and all of a sudden this light just flickered on. Like, there was nothing kind of ominous about it. It was just a very, like, simple thing that was happening. And I think that's what got in my head, was that there's nothing dramatic about it. It was just, there it is. So, I don't know. I don't know if that still holds up. But now, the last time I've watched it, the last couple times I've watched it, I'm just kind of like, I kind of see things more in like the movie making way. And that's my own problem, But, again, you see something so many times. It's just kind of, yeah, this is the part where she gets dragged out of the bed. Next on the list is, literally I could tell the same, like, things I just said, and this was the Blair Witch Project. I saw this in the theater. This was 1999. I was 12. A lot of things came out in 1999. But this movie freaked me out. I was 12. I absolutely believed that this was all real. The whole movie was real. That's pretty traumatizing. It also kind of made me irresponsible for, like a marketing campaign to be like, come to the theater and see these 3 souls not be alive anymore. I feel like a movie studio wouldn't actually do that on a big Hollywood scale. I could be wrong. I don't know. It depends on how desperate movie studios are going to get. But somehow people bought that hook, line, and sinker, and they drove that thing to like what? They made like $100 million or something. But I think that is a great movie. That is one of the best indie horror movies ever made. One of the most successful, like one of the best success stories ever. It's a very effective movie. Like, it earned its money. And I just don't happen to find it scary anymore. But I appreciate like how they made it, everything, like all the build up to it, the way that just the acting, the dialogue. A lot of people don't like Heather Donahue. They don't like her acting in it. And I disagree. I think she's awesome in it. She's playing someone who's into doing the documentary thing, and she would act like that, And I believe that character. I believe all 3 of those characters, that's who they are. Hey everyone, just wanted to announce real quick that I'll be at Horror Hound Weekend this coming March 24th through 26th in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm going to be walking around just as a fan, wearing a bunch of horror t-shirts and being sweaty and looking like a nerd, particularly when I see Devon Sawa, and Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard, and I hope to see you there. Hopefully you know what my face looks like because of Instagram, and if you're in the Discord, I know you're going to be there too, some of you. So find me, and, give me a big hug, and let's talk about horror. Okay, great. Alright, so that was the Blair Witch Project. I'm going to try to get through these ones quickly because they're not the official list. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1978, is another one that used to freak me out. That is another one that is one of my favorite horror movies of all time with, The Ring. And just, it does still freak me out to this day, especially Donald Sutherland's face at the end when he's doing the weird... If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. I guess that was a spoiler just now. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. But yeah, it doesn't terrify me the same way now as it did when I first saw it as a wee lad. The next one is The Sixth Sense from 1999, Bruce Willis. Some of the imagery in that movie I don't think I was ready for when I was 12 years old. And it's not scary now, but the one ghost woman in the kitchen with her wrists, she had been cutting her wrists, and the one kid that came into the hallway, telling Haley Joel Osment he went to show him his dad's gun, and those makeup effects, and there are a couple jump scares. Yeah, I wasn't ready for all that at 12. I mean, I liked it. M. Night Shyamalan, I think I've mentioned in a previous episode that, he's a huge inspiration for me. And he gets a lot of hate, which I think is a little unfair. He's made some stinkers, don't get me wrong. But, yeah, that movie doesn't freak me out anymore, but it used to. Now I just kind of appreciate it as just a great, ghost movie, spooky ghost story. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original one, freaked me out when I was little. And yes, I saw this movie when I was little. I was probably, I want to say probably 10 or 11. I rented this on VHS. And no, I probably didn't. I mean, no, because my parents would have known better than to rent it for me. So I probably had a friend. I had a couple friends in elementary school that were not great influences on me. They probably got a hold of the VHS somehow, or had recorded it onto a blank VHS. Maybe it was on HBO or something. But I did see it, and it freaked me out. Everything feels, there's a documentary quality to it. It feels very real. It's, you look back on it now, it's not very realistic that they really ham it up with the acting, but I think I had no reference point, to understand how movies work, and the ones that I had seen were movies of that time, very 90s movies, so seeing something with a completely different aesthetic that, felt real, or presented itself as something real, really scared the hell out of me. So, but now, I think it's a little, I appreciate the Texas Chainsaw Massacre for what it is. I think as a, low budget, indie horror movie, it's a masterpiece in that arena. It's probably one of the three best. I'd put Blair Witch up there as well. And the content, and I've made this argument to people before. I think a lot of people are saying this nowadays. They're realizing now that all the shit that's coming out, these days, is that movie's not as gory as you think looking back on it. I think the movie is very effective in the way that it communicates the idea of the gore without actually showing it. So your mind is remembering back on things that weren't actually on the screen. And I think it's a brilliant movie at doing it that way with the editing, and just there's an atmosphere to it that makes you there's like an intensity to it, and you know, the way the actresses and the actors, you know, just they're screaming, and the one guy that gets hit in the head with the hammer, he's on the floor and he's jiggling, and there's realism to it, and yeah, I don't know, I'm not as scared by it now. I just kind of appreciate it, but I think it's a little, I don't know, so I'm a little more artsy with, which isn't, I don't know what I'm trying to say about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't mind it. I just don't know if it's like one of my top like classic movies. But it is, just because of what it did. I just find the content and the writing and just like the overall story, if that had been hammered out a little bit more, with some character and some you know, maybe some like metaphor. I mean, people have analyzed this movie and really have dug deep into you know, that it's saying a lot of stuff. I don't know if I buy that. I don't know. Anywho, next, I've already talked about this movie probably 1,000 times, even though this is the 6th episode. But that's Cronenberg's The Fly. This movie I saw way too young, and you know, I can go on and on about the throwing up on the hand and on the ankle, and just him slowly morphing into a giant fly. Scared the hell out of me. But now, it's one of probably my favorite horror movie ever made. And I appreciate it more as just like a masterpiece. I think it's like just one of the best. It's firing on all cylinders with the effects, the music, the writing. It's just like a perfect horror movie, in my opinion. That's just like my opinion, man. Next is Hostel. I'm not a huge fan of this movie, but when I did see it, 2007, I was 20 when this came out. Was it 2007? Let me confirm that. No, I don't need to. It's okay. Yeah, you know, it's just so grisly and so dark and disturbing, and immediately, if you have read my novella Disseverment, you know, there's a little bit of that, not a little bit, but you know, that's going on in my novella, but I try not to focus on that as like the central theme of the story, whereas I think Hostel is, I don't know, it's just kind of not my thing, and I know that's weird coming from me because I have a novella with that content in it, but yeah, it freaked me out just with the imagery in the content, but that's about the extent of where I'll go with movies like that. I have seen. I'm probably never going to talk about these movies again on this podcast, just because they don't impress me. I'm not, you know. Anyway, The Human Centipede, you know, that's not my thing. And a Serbian film. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that, but those are not for me. I will not. I've seen them. I'm not a fan. I see what they're trying to do. I've read a Serbian film in particular. I've read the analyses of it. I've read the the excuses for the stuff that you're seeing, on the screen. I get, like, the deeper meanings, and there's, philosophy, and so I appreciate that, and I get it, but, no, not for me. Sorry. But also, hey, if that's your guys' thing, I'm totally with you, and yeah, that is in no way am I trying to say that because it's not for me, it shouldn't be for anybody. That's absolutely not what I mean. This genre is for anybody and everybody, like any genre is. I'm just telling you, like, my own tastes. Yeah, and sorry if that was an awkward moment. Because I don't want to be that type of guy that has, like, this is my official stance on this, and I want everyone who ever listens to follow. This is the canon of no, like, we're all cool guys. Everybody like what you like. I fucking like Killjoy. I genuinely like that movie. So we're all good, man. Also, by the way, I finally got my first 2-star review for Disseverment, and, like, I knew that moment was coming, because everyone knows that moment's coming. If they're a writer, if they're any kind of creator who puts something out there that can be reviewed, there's probably going to be a 1-star review or a 2-star review, or someone's going to say something bad, and, I had anxiety about that, because it's inevitable. But so I finally got one, and I was always wondering, like, what am I going to be like when that happens? And it finally happened, and I was like, cool, yeah, man. They didn't like it. And it's like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, like, I mean, I hope they didn't, like, like, buy the paperback or anything, or, because that was more than the Kindle version. It was not, the Kindle version's 99 cents. So if they spent $1 and didn't like it, that sucks. But it was $1. But at the same time, it's like, you didn't like it. I've paid movie tickets and saw movies with, like, Katherine Heigl, and didn't like it. And it's like, it happens, and I totally get it, and I'm cool with it. And I'm kind of I'm happy that was my reaction, because I didn't know what it was going to be. So yeah, bring on those 1-star and 2-star reviews, and be honest, and I'm down, and it feels good, man. Anyway, so that was Hostel. Next was so I saw this young as well, probably 7 or 8. John Carpenter's Halloween, 1978. This is, like, one of the best horror movies ever made. And, it actually is a pretty freaky movie the first time you see it, especially, like, the last 20 minutes when things really get rolling and you see Laurie, figuring everything out, and she's running from house to house, and that music is building. Carpenter's score is, that dun, 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 dun. And you just, the tension is so insane for the time that it was made, and for such a low budget movie. I think at the time it was the biggest grossing independent movie of all time. And yeah, man, the way that's made is so effective to this day, and it actually did freak me out when I was little. Like, it actually did scare me. I mean, it's Michael Myers. The reason that franchise is still so big to this day is because, he is objectively scary. That white mask is, it's no joke. I mean, he's so in the public consciousness now. I think maybe everybody's been kind of desensitized to him. But man, like, I bet in 1978, when no one, it's hard to imagine a world where no one had ever seen that mask or had ever heard of Michael Myers, and that must have been such a striking thing for people. And yeah, I just love that movie. It's so good. The Poughkeepsie tapes is another one. Now, this is another. I don't know if I would put this in the same category as Human Centipede or Hostel or Serbian Film. I wouldn't. But man, this is a freaky ass movie and very effective. I like found footage movies. There's the obvious, the best ones, and this one's good, but it's good as a first time viewing, I think, because then you read about it and its reputation, and there's the behind the scenes stuff, and I'm not saying anything like happened or anything. It's just when you watch something and it's fake, like those pseudo documentaries, you like pick up on like the acting and the just like the tricks, like the little you can just kind of tell, like your bullshit radar kind of tingles a little bit more, or your spidey sense. So it doesn't scare me as much anymore, but man, the first time I was like, Jesus Christ. Some of the imagery and just it's a good movie. I recommend that as a first time. If you've never seen it, watch it. It will freak you out, but I mean, if you watch it, I bet if you watched it again, it wouldn't freak you out as much anymore. If you like looked into it and like saw other people's reactions to it, and I don't know. If you're a nerd, you'd gradually not be as afraid of it. Now another one from I think it came out in 2008 is Quarantine, which was a remake of a I think 2007 Spanish horror movie called Rec, which I also love. Rec. I think Rec is probably the superior movie between that and the American one. There's a whole series of Rec films. I haven't seen all of them, but I love the original Rec. Quarantine, however, I happen to have seen that on the big screen, and I hadn't seen the original Spanish one yet. So seeing Quarantine on the big screen with just the sound editing, like how good it was, and I think it's one of the best like found footage movies ever made. Like just the production quality is of such a higher tier. The effects are awesome. And I think her name is Jennifer Carpenter. She was in The Exorcism of Emily Rose, and she was on Dexter. She's a insanely good actress, and she's really good in Quarantine. She's a reporter, and she's hanging out with a group of firefighters on a night, and then they get quarantined in this building as the zombie outbreak happens. And for some reason, like, it just feels legit. Like, it's a movie. Like you always know it's a movie when you watch this stuff, but the way that your mind gets sucked into it, you almost are. You're really with them on the journey. Great movie, super scary. The last 15 minutes are insane. I still love it. I still love watching it. Every couple years. Yeah, but not as scary as it used to be when I first saw it. So yeah, and then I had one more on here. So I actually thought about putting this officially on the list because I thought it still kind of freaks me out. So Final Destination 2, that fucking highway scene with the logs. I still think about that scene when I'm on the expressway going anywhere. And seeing that in the theater, I think that was like 2002 it came out. I was in high school. I think I saw it with a group of friends. Our parents let us, got us in there. I think they were sitting like in the back row, while we were sitting in the front, or something like that. We weren't 17 yet, and that opening scene is just amazing. especially for the time. I remember just like everybody was just like, man, I think Final Destination is one of the most underrated like horror franchises out there. Like, I put it up there with Scream. I like every entry in that series, all 5 of them. I don't know if anybody agrees. Let me know. But great series of movies. Like, they're fun, but they're also just like ridiculous and repulsive and just so unique. You know, with kind of the Rube Goldberg scenarios. Yeah, I love Final Destination too. That's my favorite of the series, like without question. Okay, so, all right, man, this has been a long intro to get to like the actual purpose of this episode, and I apologize. Hopefully you've had fun and you've stuck it, you've made it to here. So, yeah, I have to like start thinking about like things that scare the shit out of me, so bear with me here. So I came up with this list. These are the 13 scariest movies to this day that I've ever seen. So if I were to watch any of these movies, I already said this, I know, but like they still freak me out. If I watch them now, I'm still freaked out by them. And this is no joke. And if you think, you know, some people are scared by different things, you know, what scares you, like my wife, for example, I can't take her ever to any horror movie at the theater, ever. And because it's a waste of a ticket, because her face is buried in my shoulder the whole time, you know. So, and I love her for that. You know, I totally get it. You know, I don't expect her to be into the things I'm into, and that's awesome, you know. So it's not about that. But there's stuff like that I'm exactly like her about. So this list, you know, it has that kind of shit in it that, you know, if I'm gonna watch any of these, I'm probably gonna be thinking about this stuff for a couple days, where I'm like, damn, yeah. So I literally just squirmed in my seat, guys. But I'm not kidding. These movies freak me out. And it's funny because like I haven't seen them. Well, first I should say I'm a fan of this stuff. And the reason, you know, I have this list, the reason it's a weird thing, like I love these movies. And I love these movies because I love the genre, and you know, it doesn't sound like it makes sense that you know, these are movies that bother me. Like, how can I love something that does like a negative thing to me? You know? But I don't look at it that way. I look at it like these are really effective pieces of art that moved me in a way through sound and imagery that was like created and staged by people together on a team to make like fake scenarios that were written like by a person but by their hands that came from their brains, you know. And I find that to be such a crazy human phenomenon that people have an ability to do that to someone else, to have images in their brain that they can transfer to paper, and then a team can kind of interpret that and then make, you know, sound and imagery, or even like, you know, just like a novel or, you know, music, and produce something that like really does something to somebody, whether it be scare them or make them cry or make them laugh, you know, because, you know, I have my favorite comedies, I have my favorite, you know, any genre, or anything that moves me a certain way, but horror in particular, you know, just happens to be my favorite genre, because as someone with and if I think some of you could probably relate to this, if you have anxiety and depression and sort of have general, just kind of anxiety about the world and the state of, where we are, that there's something comforting about watching a 90s movie where a dentist loses his mind and just starts drilling people with goofy music, and the effects that you can tell the teeth aren't real, and he's that there's something comforting about just like you whoever you are, you have some shit going on in your life probably, and you're stressed at your job, or you're stressed with somebody, something happened at some point, and you just want to put on, you just want to see Jason hack some people up, and that's your comfort food. That's your some people, their comfort food is watching Dawson's Creek, and or it's like Gossip Girl, which I think that those are more disgusting than Friday the 13th. No, I'm kidding. But I can't stress this enough, like, because I've battled with this. This doesn't make you weird. Like, I'm not weird. This is just I like the real world's much scarier, man. Jason's all right. There's nothing. It's the least of our worries, guys. So when you can do something like that through fiction, when you can give me the feeling of something that's happening in the real world, I find that to be a remarkable talent of a creator who can give me something where I'm like, holy shit, I'm totally in this moment, and I feel affected by this on a real world level, and I'm putting myself in these characters' shoes, and I can't believe that my brain is tricking me into thinking that this is not fiction. And I love that sort of phenomenon that you do with your brain. So that's why I love these movies so much, is because there's like this paradox of me knowing while I'm watching them that, like, holy shit, I'm just floored by what they're doing to me, while knowing that, appreciating them as pieces of art that people made that I know is not real. Like, the fact that I have to, like, reconcile that while I'm watching them, I think is, like, a huge testament to, like, their craft making these. So, like, I would, like, for me personally, I would put these at the very top of the list for, if you have the same taste as me, like, these are the ones that really scared me, that I think would probably scare you. If you really sat down and watched them and let yourself get sucked into the story and really turn the lights off, I think you would be like, God damn, this is like, some of them might be kind of, so we'll get started here. Number 13 is Arachnophobia, which I just saw for the first time about 7 or 8 months ago. Shockingly, to the surprise of a couple of my friends, because it's such a 90s classic, but I have a legitimate fear of spiders. My wife laughs at me when spiders are in the house. I feel very, like, unmanly about it. I can't stand them. They freak me out. I know. This is the funny thing. Like, this is another thing I was saying. Like, I know that it's irrational. I understand that. There's nothing you can tell me that doesn't. I've already heard it. I've already read it. Like, it's like trying to explain. You can't explain. I just don't like them. They freak me out. I've had one. I've caught one on my leg, and it just, it ruined me. So I just hate them. And the bigger they are, the more minutes probably just got taken off my life from panic. So, you know, seeing Arachnophobia, finally growing a pair and watching it with the lights off, you know, on a big TV with good sound in my basement, you know, and I watched it with my wife, and it didn't affect her. And that's what's so funny. You know, what I was saying is, you know, the way that I take her to a movie at the theater and she has her face buried in my shoulder, you know, Arachnophobia didn't affect her at all watching it at home in the basement. So I can't make fun of her in the same way that, you know, I'm sitting next to her and she's not laughing at me, you know. So that's one of the funny things about this genre, I feel, is that, you know, you don't get that. I don't think you can have that same kind of dynamic with romance films or romance novels or sci-fi. I don't think there's kind of like a dynamic like that. And I think that's super interesting. Like, as a part of the human experience, that's pretty wild to me. Well, I guess it's kind of like with comedy too, though, because, you know, we'll watch a comedy, me and some friends, or me and my wife, and there will be a scene where I'm laughing hysterically, and she's just sitting there like, this is the dumbest movie I've ever seen. And the opposite will be the case. You know, she'll be laughing, and I'm like, this is like, what? Yeah, I love that stuff. I think that stuff is so, like, fascinating to me, but I'm also a nerd, so I don't know if, like, I'm boring you to tears, or I don't know. Number 12 is a movie from 2001. I think some of you have probably seen this. It's called Session 9. And this is an example of when a horror movie is working, it's firing on all cylinders with, like, the tone, and sort of, like, there's a mood to it, and part of what contributes to that is the score. It's a very, like, droning, kind of unsettling, just kind of like, there's, like, this ominous, you know, feeling. There's certain movies that they're very masterful with the editing and the score, and, you know, they create a mood that you feel a movie, and it's very, when movies can do that, it's like a magic trick almost, because it's like, these are just it's just images and sounds. It's just people saying things. It's just a camera pointing at things. There's nothing that mystifying going on. There's nothing, you know, it's kind of simple stuff going on when you think about it. But it's the way that the words are strung together, it's the way that the images are strung together, and the sounds, that there's some kind of magic trick where your body is having a reaction to the stuff that you're seeing and hearing. And I just, like, Session 9 is one of those movies for me where, and it might not be the case for you or other people, but it really gets me good. It just really unsettles me to this day. And, you know, there's a claustrophobia to it. There's like a mysteriousness to it, you know, when they're listening to these old sessions, you know, they're leading up to Session 9. There's a story behind it. I don't want to spoil it too much, but I highly recommend that movie as just a really creepy, like, under your skin, what's going on, kind of just slowly building dread. Ugh, yeah, it's creepy, man. Number 11. I think this is where some people might start to laugh at me a little bit, because now we're getting into, like, really popular, like, Hollywood movies that, you know, everyone's seen. So now I might start to sound like a 17-year-old girl here. But number 11 is The Grudge from 2004. And it still scares the hell out of me. I don't like just the sounds from the girl, and I've only seen it like 3 times since it came out, and on purpose because it still freaks me out. The little boy, doesn't he like he has a cat sound coming out of his mouth? He's like meowing, and just the way that she died, she drowned in the tub, and she has that thing with her throat, that noise she's making because did she hang herself? Is that why? And she's making that noise. She's like, and the way that she's coming down the stairs at the end, and I can't. I don't know, man. It's the editing. It's the way that just like the mood of it. I haven't seen the original one because I'm talking about the American remake with Sarah Michelle Gellar. That's the one that freaks me out. I've not seen the original for the same reason. It's gonna scare the shit out of me. I know it is. And I can't explain it. It's just one of those things. Certain things affect people in certain ways. I'm sorry. Number 10 is High Tension. I've seen this movie a couple times. But this is another one of those... this is kind of above, a higher tier than the kind of extreme movies I had mentioned earlier, where this movie's so good with its, just the suspense and the realism, and, like I had mentioned with movies before this one, just the way that it sets a mood and a tone. It's very, very grisly and very, just suspenseful, and it's extreme in a way that I think is still done in an artful way, and not in a way that's gratuitous, and in a way that you'd be like, like one of the ones I'd mentioned before that I'm not a fan of. But when you mix all those things together, this movie still freaks me out. Just how it's of such a high quality. It's a very effective scary movie. Highly recommended. Number 9 is I feel similarly about this as High Tension, and also just the general premise, and that's The Descent from 2005. The Descent, I think, is a modern classic, and I saw this in the theater when it had come out. 2005, I was probably like 18. Yeah, I was 17 or 18. So I was becoming an adult. So when you're 17 or 18, you think you're cool, and around that time, I'd already seen The Ring, and you're trying to act like a badass, and you're like, oh, dude, the movie's not scary, it's whatever. I did the same thing with, The Exorcist. And, but deep down, you see The Descent, and it's like, holy fuck, this movie's actually really scary. And, meanwhile, you're talking to your friends about it, and you're like, fuck, it was whatever, dude. It was like... Those white little creatures, they didn't... What were they, bats? Whatever. I can't remember if that's actually what I was like back then. I don't think I was, but... Man, that movie's very effective, very scary, and just like the claustrophobia, and just the setting of being in the cave system, and... and just like the speculative nature... Not that it's realistic or anything, or that it could happen, but there's like a little thing in the back of your mind while watching it, and I feel this way about The Silence. There's a Netflix movie called The Silence, which is about a bunch of bats that have been hibernating and come out of a cave. But The Descent makes me feel, the same way. Like, is it possible? Like, I mean, is there... I don't know. I know it's not, but it makes you wonder, like, is there some kind of dormant species that's been, in hibernation for thousands of years, and we just don't know about it. You know, I'm probably, this sounds stupid, really. I don't even know why I said it, because there's so many scientists out there that are smarter than me that, you know, they'll never listen to this, obviously, but it's just like, no, we know that can't be the case, so... Anyway, but yeah, The Descent is still a very scary movie. Just the tension, the score is really good. Still scares me. Number 8 is, and I know some people are still freaked out by this movie, so I know I'm not crazy when I say this one, is Event Horizon from 1997, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, not Paul Thomas Anderson, Paul W.S. Anderson, who did some of the Resident Evil movies, and he did Mortal Kombat, and some other movies. But he did Event Horizon, which I think is his, like, masterpiece. And it's got Sam Neill, Lawrence Fishburne in it. It's a kind of sci-fi horror, Lovecraftian, just like, it feels like Hellraiser. It feels like maybe Alien a little bit. There's imagery in it that is so disturbing. It came out in 97, and I think it's ahead of its time. And I know other people feel this way too. It's just a freaky ass movie, man. Like, it feels so much like you're entering hell. Yeah, I think people have... There's some speculation that, you know, some fan speculation or fan fiction that this is connected to Hellraiser, or it's like connected to Doom. I'm not like totally familiar with Doom. I've only played like the original one and then the new remake that had come out like in 2018 or whatever. But you know, that's cool that people have made connections like that. But man, the movie scared the hell out of me. There's one scene where they're on this other ship, or they watch the video of the previous crew that was on the ship, and you kind of see their descent into madness, and it's just like some of the craziest. You don't see much. It's just the way that it's edited and like the makeup effects. It's just some of the most like I don't know, man. It's just really bothersome, and there's nothing necessarily like frightening about it. Like, if I told you what the imagery was, I don't know if it would sound crazy, but actually seeing it is different. I don't know, like, but I recommend that movie. It freaks me out. There's a lot of stuff in that movie that freaks me out, but that one scene in particular, of this other crew, I always think I think about that quite often, and I'm just like, ugh, Jesus. And yeah, it's very Clive Barker-esque, and it reminds me of Hellraiser, where it's just that's a brand of horror that I like, where I like it not for the reasons that are concerning. I like it how it's on such a cerebral level. It disturbs you on a level, like on this human level, where there's like a savagery and a, I don't know, it almost like makes you reduce yourself to your most basic, like, animalistic parts, and it scares you to think of yourself as just another thing in a big, like, this big system of living things that like you're just a thing, and the way that people are treated just like things in some of these stories, or they treat themselves like things, instead of human people. I don't know. There's something about it that really gets me on a really deep level in my head. That I think that's what the genre is all about. Is to be very thought provoking, and to make you look at humanity in a different way. Like, that's where the art comes in. If I may be farty for a second. Yeah. I you get what I mean? That's the shit that inspires me as a writer, is when you're really thinking about stuff, and that's who I'm going to continue to be. That's how I want to be, as someone that writes stories that you, not necessarily the imagery, but like the thoughts behind certain situations, like on a deeper level where you're thinking about it and you're like, damn, that's like, I'm thinking of something different, and it's just disturbing. And you ruined my whole year. So thank you. That's how I want you to feel. I want to ruin your week. I'm kidding. I don't want that. I'm just kidding. Okay, so next on the list is actually based on a novel. It's one of my favorite horror novels of all time. I know this podcast has mostly been, covering movies, but I am going to do, episodes on, my writing process and my favorite horror books and novels. So my next episode's probably going to be my 13 favorite horror books, and this book would be on it. But the movie is The Ruins from 2008, directed by Carter Smith, and it was based on the novel by Scott Smith. The novel is excellent. I read it in college, but then the movie came out, and the book is usually better than the movie, which is the case with this, but the movie happened to be damn good too. And I think it's a little underrated as far as like not modern, but like, 2000s horror movies go. I think it's a little underappreciated. And it still freaks me out to this day. It's creepy, the situation that the characters get themselves into, on the ruins, and then what they discover that's there, and kind of the body horror element of it. It's body horror kind of mixed with the supernatural, mixed with kind of like ancient folklore. There's a realism to it, while, I think handled by a different writer, and then adapted by a different team, it would have come across as very silly, and it almost would have been like a sci-fi original movie. Because at its core, if you were to just say the words of what it's about to someone, it would probably sound silly. But the way that it's executed, the way that the novel is executed, and the way that the movie is done, I don't know. Like, I find myself, I take the story seriously, and it's like it's very effective, and it gives me the willies, man. Great movie if you haven't seen it. I think it's super underrated, from 2008. Yeah, and I think the concept of what happens in that movie is creepy. That particular, I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but yeah, check that movie out. Yeah, that was number 7. So I almost feel like I need to play like soft jazz or something just to get myself through this. Because now we're going deep into like the shit that really scares me. And I mean, it's worth it because you get to know more about me as a person, which is part of what this podcast is about over time. I'm I had concerns when I wrote Disseverment and published it that there would be, if it ever got an audience of any size, whether it be like 10 people or, whatever, that people would read it and think, man, whoever wrote that is really a troubled person who should get help. And, I hope that's not the case, that anyone thinks that, because I'm a normal dude. There's stuff that scares me just like it does anyone. And as a writer, I wrote something. The reason I wrote it is because the idea scared me. So if you were repulsed or disgusted or terrified or, just kind of unsettled by my story, it's kind of like, hey, so was I. Everybody has kind of dark thoughts. It's kind of a natural part of the human psyche. And I happen to take my dark thoughts and I put them to paper. And, it's therapeutic for me. It's, it's a thing, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but, I'm right there with you. Like, Disseverment scared me. I want to write stuff, from the perspective of something that would creep me out, and that's the whole reason that I want to continue doing it. Because I'm like, if any of you are horror fans out there, I'm like, the whole reason I'm doing this is because I'm one of you. I'm one of you, and like, I'm making lists, and I'm telling you about what scares me, because there's shit that scares me too. So we're getting into the dark shit now for when it comes to me as a person. This is where, we get to learn a little bit more about me. It's so weird. Number 6 is, I mentioned it before, at the beginning of this, is Jacob's Ladder from 1990, directed by Adrian Lyne. And this, has a ton of people in it. Tim Robbins, Elizabeth Pena, Danny Leo, this guy named Matt Craven. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of him, but Jason Alexander, who played George on Seinfeld, Ving Rhames, Eric LaSalle, he was on ER. Macaulay Culkin is in it. And I've seen this movie a couple times over the years, and you see all these faces that you know so well. That's kind of a part of the American, zeitgeist, and you would think seeing all these big names in a movie would make it less effective as a scary movie, but I don't know, it's like still, it doesn't matter at all that you see all these people, because there's moments of Jason Alexander acting, and I'm like, there's a little bit of a hint of George in there, and you would think that it would take me right out of it, and no, man, it's so well done that none of that matters, and I think that's a testament to how good of a job everyone did on that movie. I don't know much of what else Adrian Lyne has done. I haven't looked into his work. I'm sure I've probably seen something else by him and didn't realize it. But Jacob's Ladder is the whole idea of not knowing what's real and not real, and kind of dealing with trauma. In his case, it happens to be post-traumatic stress disorder from his experience in Vietnam, and there's, some unsettling kind of conspiracy theory, elements of government, kind of tests that were done on these soldiers, and just the imagery and stuff that he sees. Tim Robbins' character, Jacob Singer, and just his past trauma, everything feels so, from the beginning that things don't feel quite in reality, but you still feel like you're in the real world in terms of you identify with his experience as something that you feel that you could go through. Like you might have had a moment in your life where something surreal happened to you, like, you know, like when 9/11 happened, you're watching the TV and it was just kind of like, is this really happening? Is this for real? And kind of like when the pandemic was really ramping up, and, you know, we were in that first stage of things were really starting to shut down, and everybody was unsure of stuff. You know, kind of like that heightened kind of, you know, surreal moment where it's like, this is like a major turning point in like our life. Like what the fuck's gonna happen? Are we gonna get through it? Like, what? You know, and you almost don't even know, like everything that happened before that moment, like, you know, you almost don't even feel like if you're experiencing reality anymore. You know, it's like a really terrifying feeling. And so it makes, you know, watching Jacob's Ladder so relatable, you know, and just kind of like your concept of dreams, you know, like we've all had dreams that felt like, that are so vivid, you know, you wake up and you're like, you can't believe that it wasn't really happening, because you felt things, you know, and, you know, so just watching that movie it just makes you think about a lot of stuff, and, you know, and that's not even, I'm not even scratching the surface of what's going on in that movie. And there are certain sequences, you know, there's I'm not going to spoil it, but, you know, I had mentioned, you know, there's a couple famous scenes. You know, the famous scene is when he's, you know, actually traveling through hell, quote unquote, you know, metaphorically, and there's like this dance sequence where they're playing a James Brown song, and I think it's like probably one of the top 5 like most terrifying sequences I've ever seen in a movie. And for me personally, you know, and it's so scary, like it's hard to explain this. I feel like some of you would get this. Like, it's so scary. When I was watching it the other night, I was laughing during the scene, because I was like, I can't believe that this movie's doing this to me, that it's so effective in how fucking terrifying it is that I'm laughing. And, you know, it just floored me. The imagery and just like the editing and how the music is incorporating, it's causing the mood, you know, to be unsettling when it shouldn't. It's like a weird, you know, juxtaposition of the two, you know, of the scenario and the music with it, and it's just like, it's so good, you know. That's me being a nerd. You know, there's probably people who watch that and they're just like, you know, whatever. You know, I don't know. But yeah, if you haven't seen Jacob's Ladder, definitely see it. And if you're like me, if you have the same kind of tastes that I do, I think that movie might terrify you. So you know, I warned you. Next on the list is from 1973, and that is the original The Wicker Man. And again, I think I've mentioned this before, not the remake with Nicolas Cage. This is the original 1973 classic that was directed by Robin Hardy. And this one might be laughable to some of you as well, but I think this is one of the most, like, mind-blowing, like, get inside your head type of movies, where, you know, I think you need to, on the surface of it, it's kind of funny, because it's, you know, some of the stuff you're seeing is silly, and there's an argument that can be made. I think people have made this argument that The Wicker Man is actually a comedy, like kind of a dark comedy, and I can see that. There's something about it, and I've mentioned Ari Aster before, who's a brilliant, like, he's like one of the top directors in the game right now. He made Hereditary and Midsummer, and he did this short film, The Strange Thing About the Johnsons, that you can find on YouTube. I made my friends Brian and Nicole watch it. I don't know if I had mentioned that on another episode, but it's just like it's one of the most insane short movies. In a good way. I just think that guy's a genius, man. And Hereditary and Midsommar is what some people say Midsommar because they think they're fancy. I love him. But the Wicker Man reminds me kind of that same kind of aesthetic where, there's stuff to kind of like chuckle at because it's so weird. Their sense of reality on this island, this kind of cult, is so like skewed and weird. You almost laugh at the absurdity of it. But as it's progressing and you're watching it, and you understand that these people are very serious about their beliefs, and to them, it's not weird at all. It's absolutely normal. I'm not trying to be like controversial, but there's something kind of spooky about thinking, like holding a mirror up to your own kind of society, and examining like the shit that we do in our own society and that we don't think is weird, but when you really look at things, we do some weird stuff that I feel like are ritualistic and kind of, I can say cult-like behavior. And, that's just when you look at things from a different perspective. I'm not trying to get spicy here, but, when you see it in The Wicker Man and you see something that you're not, particularly like used to seeing, like the way that they handle certain aspects of their religion, and the way that they just go about it in such a matter-of-fact way, and the lead character who's a police officer, slash kind of like detective, just what happens to him in the final act is just unsettles me so deeply on like a human level. And it's specifically because it is being done by humans. It's humans that think there's like this hive mind kind of quality to, there's a common cause that they're participating in, that they're living for, that doesn't make sense to like every like to common people like you and me, and that kind of stuff kind of terrifies me. I don't know if that makes sense, if I just said a bunch of gibberish, but that stuff really gets in my head and terrifies me, like Midsommar did. Midsommar. So I highly recommend The Wicker Man. I would say watch it in the right frame of mind. It is a 1973 movie. There's some stuff in there that's like, you would probably laugh. I laughed at a couple things. Just because, like, some of the stuff is so ridiculous. But if you watch it in the right context, I mean, it's just so bizarrely scary. But yeah, The Wicker Man. Check that out. And don't watch the Nicolas Cage one unless you're just getting drunk with friends or something, Okay, number 4. God, we're at number 4 already. It's been like 9 hours. Number 4, this might be a little laughable, but I don't care. And that is The Strangers from 2008, directed by Brian Bertino. I think this is a kind of modern, 2000s classic. It's based on a true story. I think it's mostly tied to the Charles Manson murders, and there was another incident that had happened, I think, in Illinois. I'm planning on doing a podcast episode on stuff that happened, stories that are based on real events, movies that are based on real events. That'll be fun. But The Strangers, when I saw it in the theater when it came out in 2008, that's one of those movies where, like, I was in college and you go back to your dorm and, like, you're afraid to, like, walk around the hallways because you might see them in their masks at the end of the hallway walking towards you, and you're afraid to turn the lights off because you might, you're afraid to have the blinds down or closed because you're going to see one of them out the window, and it's just, like, it's just so well done. It still freaks me out to this day because of just the, reality of it, the realism. It's treated with, seriousness. There's nothing. It probably has its moments where it's not, it's a little cheesy. But for the most part, it's just, like, very effectively, just well done. And, Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman's characters, their relationship and kind of the setup to where they are, their heads are emotionally. It makes you care about them more as characters. You see, that's the difference between, like, this kind of thing and what I was saying about, like, Human Centipede or, like, Hostel, is you get these characters that there is a story about them where you care about them. And then when something happens to them, you are feeling what they're going through, and, there's things happening to them. You don't want those things to happen to them. And, you want to see them get through it. And then, like, there's something like Human Centipede where, you don't really give a shit. And the things that's happening to them, like, it's just dumb. So there's a dumb thing happening to dumb characters that you don't care about. So it's like, why am I even watching it? It's just, like, I don't know. And the same with the Hostel. It's just these three douchebags. And I know it's trying to be, like, examining America and, like, but, like, I don't care. It's just bad things happening to bad people. So, but The Strangers, I don't want those things to happen to those characters. I want them to get through it, and it's a tragic ending, and it's scary. I think about me and my wife. I relate to that happening to us at our house. There's just something so, like, real, identifiable with it, that it could happen to anybody. It can't happen. Chances are, it's not going to happen. You have, security, set up, and, cameras and shit if you're one of those people, and, if you home defense. There's a scene in this movie that I always joke about. I think I put on Reddit a couple weeks ago, is that one part I don't like is that they're hiding in the closet at one point, and he's got a shotgun, and spoiler alert, he accidentally, well, I'm not going to say it, he accidentally does something he shouldn't have. And he could have just waited it out. They could have waited it out in the closet with the shotgun and just waited for the strangers to come. And he could have just did the exact thing he did 5 minutes ago. And they would have been home free. They would have been fine. Like, you have a shotgun, just sit your ass there and wait. And then shoot them when they get there. But he has this cockamamie idea that they need to leave the closet. It's like, what are you doing? But I get it, they have to continue the tension and build, the suspense, and, whatever. It's still a masterpiece. Okay. Number 3 is a movie I try to tell as many people about as I can. I think I've told all my friends about it. I've made the joke that it's not the movie you think it is. I'm pretty sure, everyone I know in my immediate circle I've talked about this. I don't think this movie gets enough attention, or enough, respect. It is a 2010 movie. I don't think it went to theaters. I think it was direct to DVD. It's a movie called Frozen, and it's not the Disney Frozen. It's directed by Adam Green, who did the Hatchet films. I'm trying to think what else he did. The Hatchet films are very popular. I mean, way more popular than Frozen. But Frozen, you know, I've read on the internet that it's based on a real event that happened, or you know, it's a common thing that has happened. But I find it so relatable. And it's not like a specific fear of mine, but it's like something that I imagine myself going through that and being absolutely terrified about what to do. And like, not even with, I mean, it's just, it's so terrifying, dude. And just the shit that they get into with you know, I don't want to spoil it, but, you know, apparently this actually happens in America. This has happened before. This particular scenario in the movie is not based on an actual story, but this has happened where people sneak onto chairlifts at ski resorts in the mountains, and then, you know, when they sneak on them, they close the thing down at closing time while people are still up there. You know, and nobody is aware that there were people up there, and because they snuck on, and everything's closed down. And, you know, depending on the schedule of the resort, or the slopes rather, you know, they might be shut down for like 3 days or 4 days. So in this movie, you know, they're like 200 feet in the air, and the chairlift, you know, the whole system shut down for like a week. And there's 3 of them stuck on this chairlift together. And, you know, that you just see them slowly freezing to death, trying to come up with like a game plan, like how are we going to get down? Like, you can't just jump down. And, you know, just the performances from the 3 leads. Sean Ashmore's one of them, which is funny because he's a lead in The Ruins. You know, he must be one of my favorite horror actors, I guess. He's in 2 of my favorite, like, holy shit horror movies I've ever seen. So, I mean, he's great in this too. And, you know, just the stuff that happens to them is just like, it's so brutal, man. And, you know, it's not a movie I can watch very often. You know, and that's just me personally. Again, you know, maybe some people can watch it and it doesn't bother them at all. You know, maybe you have a different perspective when you watch it. Maybe you think it's completely unrealistic. But I completely relate to it, man. I'm with those characters the whole time from beginning to end. Everything that happens, I'm just like, oh my god. It's really just well done. Yeah, Frozen from 2010. Okay, number 2 is a French horror film that I've mentioned before. It's called Martyrs. It's directed by Pascal Leger. And it's just like one of the most... I don't even want to talk about it that much. I think I've seen it maybe 3 times. I don't think that's even true. Maybe twice. But it's a hard watch, man. It is a piece of art. It is something that's supposed to, you know, move you in a certain way, and I appreciate it for its, you know, for what it's trying to say, and, but like, it's not a movie I enjoy. If you ever ask me, like, you know, what's your favorite horror movie? Like what are some of your favorite ones? I would never, like, think about this movie ever. Like, it's not something I ever want to watch. If I ever watch it, it's because I'm interested in like the writing process, and, you know, just like different like character building choices, and, you know, I'm a nerd for that stuff because I'm a writer, you know, and there's like a research part of me that just wants to learn more about the genre and how things, how creators decide certain things. So there's that part of me that is always like wanting to learn. So that's why I watch stuff like that. And so it's not for like enjoyment. It's more for enjoyment of like the craft of making that stuff. So in that regard, like that movie, in all categories, it's just like masterful. It's like 10 out of 10 on all those things. But it's just like so just devastating and brutal, and there's stuff in it that's gonna like just stay with me the rest of my life. So I mean, I can't recommend it to you. So that's number 2. That's Martyrs. Yeah. Number 1. We've come to a close here, guys, and thank you for bearing with me through this. Is more. This might cause some like kind of like what, like kind of do the dog head tilt thing. But it's the Mothman Prophecies from 2002. And yes, it's the one with Richard Gere and Laura Linney. It's directed by Mark Pellington, who I think is a fantastic director who hasn't directed enough movies. He directed another movie called Arlington Road with Tim Robbins and Jeff Bridges, which I think is just like an amazing movie. If you haven't seen it, super underrated. But he directed The Mothman Prophecies in 2002. It's based on a quote-unquote true story that happened in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And I guess that's safe to say it's like still quote-unquote happening to this day. These Mothman sightings, there's a book that was written about it called The Mothman Prophecies by John Keel, I believe his name was. And the reason it bothers me so much, besides like the way the movie is directed, there's something like very... Well, first of all, it hits close to home. I live in Ohio. So that bridge collapse that happened, that's something I've always heard about growing up. To see like something depicted in a film that I actually grew up hearing about, that was very like surreal to see that on a big screen when I saw it in high school. So there's that. There's the way that it's directed, some of the scenes, it's just edited in a certain way. The music is kind of like this droning kind of atmosphere where it's not like a typical Hollywood score. It's more of a mood. And there's one scene where Richard Gere is talking to this voice, Injured Cold, I believe is what he calls himself, this like entity, and he's telling him to, Injured Cold knows things, that he's telling him on the phone, and the scene is just super chilling to me. It's just like, it really bothers me, not because like I believe that it really happened. The book says that it did. It is apparently a real account of things that happened. But I was telling my wife, like, it's not that I don't believe that this stuff is based on things that happen in reality. It's that this whole town of Point Pleasant experienced this thing. And, you can say that they're all lying. You can say that, okay, let's say that 96% of them are lying. Of the whole town of Point Pleasant. I think there was something like, there were so many witnesses to this Mothman thing. Not just Mothman, but like weird, eerie, supernatural events that were going on in the town that they kept connecting back to this Mothman thing. I've watched documentaries on it and read, some stuff about it. And, like, let's just say thousands of people did this, like, had these stories about this, first-hand accounts. And, like, let's say 96% of them were lying. That's still 4% that are telling the truth, and that 4% could be, like, 800 people, or, whatever. So 800 people are telling the truth, like, that's terrifying. So even if, like, 10,000 people are lying, 800 are telling the truth, like, that's how I feel about alien abductions and, like these UFO sightings and people, quote unquote abductees who, claim to have been experimented on. And now you see all this stuff coming out, from the Pentagon. And, I don't have, like, an official opinion on this stuff. I mean, I think in all likelihood, we're probably not alone. There's probably shit going on that we don't understand. I mean, I feel like that's a given. But I'm not going to say that little gray people are with big black almond eyes are coming and, taking people and putting things up their butts. I'm not going to just say that. I need a little bit more. I just find it so fascinating. I find it fascinating that I can't say that I don't know. I find it fascinating that there's so many accounts of that happening. And that's what scares me, is that I don't know, that I can't say it. I think in all likelihood there's people lying, but I know in all likelihood there's probably people that aren't lying that are really convinced that this happened to them, and I think that's super freaky. Maybe they just have, like, an emotional disorder where they think this happened to them. I think that's freaky. And, like, what are the odds of all these people having the same mental, emotional, depression issues where they believe these things happen to them? I think that's creepy. Like, what are the things that happen to people where they all believe that same thing? The whole thing is just terrifying to me, whether it's actually even real or not. Like, something's happening. There's some kind of a phenomenon happening. So, I mean, the phenomenon is real because we're talking about it, So, that's how I feel about the Mothman prophecies. Is like, something happened. There's official police records. People made official statements. Thousands of them did. And it's just like, well, what the fuck happened? It's just everybody got together and lied about it. It's hard for me to be a skeptic, because I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I have friends that are skeptics, and I totally am with you. I'm with that mentality. But then just reading about it is so, like, terrifying, because the skeptic part of you is so challenged by just the amount of data that's out there. Especially when it comes to, like UFOs, you can fake you can fake photos and fake video, and anybody can, like, write up a story about what happened to them. And I wrote a novella, for God's sakes, that's in the first person, and I wrote it as if it was happening to me, and that wasn't me. I wrote about a character named Tyler, and and it's like, but it's just that there's so many people. That's the part that freaks me out. So that's why the Mothman Prophecies is the scariest movie I've ever seen. Is because it feels so, like, real. It's actually... the movie is well done. It's a good movie. The director's great. And, like, it's based on stuff you can read that we still don't get. It doesn't make sense. And, maybe there are other theories out there about what actually happened. Maybe there was some kind of mass, psychosis. There are theories about that out there, and I'd love to know more and kind of dive deeper into, maybe there are some kind of psychology experts that, that have done, like, a deep dive into what they think is happening with all these people in West Virginia, in this town. But it's like, something's going on. Like, was everybody drugged? So, yeah, when I get to thinking about that, the more unsettled I get is because it's not whether or not the Mothman itself. It's not about whether the creature is real, whether or not you actually see this giant moth thing with red eyes. It's not specifically just that, because that alone is terrifying. It's not that. It's whether or not, even if it isn't true, what is actually going on. It's the unknown. It's the part that, it's something unknowable that you can only speculate on, and the more you think about it, the less it makes sense. And that's terrifying to me, is not being able to come up with a solution. I hate that. Yeah. So guys, those are the 13 scariest movies I've ever seen, for various reasons. I'd love to know your guys' lists. I had a great time talking about these. I hope you did too, listening. Yeah, I want to thank all of you for supporting me and just listening to me, just kind of rant and rave about all this stuff. I have a lot more coming up. I'll be talking more about my writing and just my favorite books. Analyzing just things that inspire me, writers that inspire me. I really want to talk about my favorite writers. If you guys are interested in that. And, yeah, I really appreciate all the support out there. And, everybody in the Discord, hello. Hope you had fun. And, yeah, I'll have more for you next week. Until then, yeah, have a great week, and see you later.